Well, hello everybody. I'm back again. Are you ready for justice? Are you ready for freedom? I am. All right. So, how are we going to do this? We're going to take care of business. All right. So, let's take a look at a couple of constitutional words. Then we're going to get into the a reading. Hopefully, we'll finalize the Gretchen Whitmer uh, affidavit and court, and then we'll talk about how we're going to move forward. Okie doke. So, this is a preamble. Since through divine providence we enjoy the blessings of civil, political, and religious liberty, we, the people of West Virginia, in and through the provisions of this Constitution, reaffirm our faith in the constant reliance upon God and seek diligently to promote, preserve, and perpetuate good government in the state of West Virginia for common welfare, freedom, and security for ourselves and our posterity. Those are some beautiful words, aren't they? Absolutely. All right. Now, let's see. Do I want to read this one? Yeah, why not? Article 1, Relations to Government of the United States. The state of West Virginia is and shall remain one of the United States of America. The Constitution of the United States of America and the laws and treaties made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land. The supreme law of the land is common law. Deprivation of life, liberty, property, etc., by due course of law. No citizen of this state shall be deprived of life, liberty, property, privileges, or immunities. I keep telling you, you got immunity, national immunity. And if you knew who you were, we wouldn't have to go through any of this, right? Okay. Or in any manner disenfranchised, except by due course of the law of the land. That's common law. None of your rights can be abridged. No repugnant legislation can stand. All right. So you can't be disenfranchised. That means you got franchise. What do you got franchise on? Sure appeared to me you got franchise on life, liberty, property, privileges, immunity. Franchise on immunity. Imagine that. What else we got here? Take a look at real quick before we start talking about our governor in the great state of Michigan. Objective of government, that the sole objective and only legitimate end of government is to protect the citizen of protect the citizen in the enjoyment of life, liberty, and property. And when the government assumes other functions, it is usurpation and oppression. And one of these talks about how slavish it is to surrender to arbitrary oppression. To be informed of victims' constitutional rights. Yep. So every time one of these road pirates, one of these bar members, violates your rights, you're entitled to be advised of your rights. But that doesn't happen. That's going to change. You got a right to restitution. If you were advised of your rights and you knew you had a right to restitution, things would be a whole lot different, wouldn't it? Especially if you knew you had immunity, national immunity, to immunity from arrest without a court order from a grand jury developed from an affidavit by a man with a claim. And then they can stop you, which is an arrest. They can detain you and question you. They might let you walk away on your own recognizance at that point. Depends on your testimony, depends on the situation, right? Cause no harm, you're going to be just fine. Own your authority, you're going to be just fine. All right, what's this one say? No law shall be enacted in this state limiting the amount of damages to be recovered for causing the death or injury of any person. Whoa. Whoa. No law shall be enacted. What law? No law. No law shall be enacted in this state limiting the amount of damages to be recovered for causing the death or injury of any person. No limit for an injury. They're creating a lot of injuries. Here we go. One of my favorites. That no person shall be barred from prosecuting or defending before any tribunal in the state by himself or counsel any civil cause to which he is a party. Oh, I am party to so many. You know what? I got to sit down and count, if I can, all the different departments, agencies, individuals. It's a lot. All right. All right, we'll get through this and then we'll get into reading. All right. Now, how are we going to fix this? It's simple. People want to know what book you're looking at. Where are you getting your information? How are you going to deal with this? All right, listen up. That all persons invested with the legislative or executive powers of government are the trustees of the public and as such accountable for their conduct. All right. What's the highest power? We the people. They are our trustees. They're our servants. All right? They're our servants. So they're going to do what we tell them to do. And I got some orders to give. Now, I have taken the position as the executive emergency manager for the state of Michigan. And it's easy for me to do. I have the PCAPs. I got the PCAPs. And you know about it. I don't have to list it all off here. I can represent every man and woman. Every man, every male, every female. Of all ages. because of my discoveries, because of my issued patent, because of my class action lawsuit for we the people, and because I have the evidence, the PCAPs of the treason with the governor, with the sheriff. So they think we're hamstrung? Let's read a little more. Accountable for their conduct. Wherefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted and the public liberty manifestly endangered, is your liberty manifestly endangered? Are you able to get yourself some Ethan's formulations, cannabis formulations for optimal oral health? No, you're denied that liberty. Now, Governor Snyder didn't have time. Jack Bergman and Gary Peters, they could care less. Oh, yeah, I years ago. And Whitmer, same thing. So let's take a look at that again. Wherefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted and public liberty manifestly endangered, and all other means of redress are ineffectual. All right, let's talk about that all other means. Have I done that? Yeah, I have. The NIH, the CDC, the ADA, the dental schools, hundreds of legislators, governors, presidents, doctors, medical providers, dentists, the NIH, the FDA, the DEA, the USPTO, other countries. And all other means of redress are ineffectual. I think I meet that criteria. I think I met that criteria. The people may and of right ought to reform the old or establish a new government. Ethan, how are you going to do this? How are you going to deal with the treasonous rat, Kalkaska County Sheriff Pat Whiteford, and the treasonous rat, Governor Gretchen Esther Whitmer? How are you going to do it, Ethan? Let's take a look. The persons invested with the legislative or executive powers of government are the trustees of the public. They're your servants. And as such what? Accountable for their conduct. Accountable to who? To you. To we the people. Now I'm the executive emergency manager for the state of Michigan. Take care of this. We're going to clean this mess up. It's time to clean house and get these people, these innocent people, out of prison. And we'll get all you out of chains. Have you put your car in the private yet? It's just so simple. Right here. You can do the job on your title. You can move your vehicle into the private because you're going to represent your straw man. Don't worry about the fraud. You got all power. Fraud eviscerates everything. You got to crush this. All right. How are you going to crush it? Get your title. Represent your straw man. Straw man is all caps. That's an entity. That's a corporation. All right. When you get done with that, you're going to take it and put it in a copy machine. And you're going to reduce it in size so that it fits in this blank space here, right? Then you're going to take those 2 pieces of paper, you put them in the copy machine. You can make a copy. I'd probably make 4 or 5, 6 or 7. Then you can take that on up to the notary jurat. You're going to put your John Henry on there, your autograph, witnessed by the notary jurat, get it stamped and sealed. Now you got a court of record document. You got an affidavit with a copy of your automobile, your motorcycle, your whatever it is that you've got wheels that moves you around that you got a title for. You're going to represent your straw man and you are going to sell it to the living man. Now, you got to make an adjustment on there because it calls for a signature from the purchaser. Purchaser don't make a signature. Purchaser is a living man. You make an autograph. So you're going to take a pen and you put a line through that word signature. You're going to write the word autograph, and then you're going to pen your mark. Whether you want all lowercase for your name, or you want a uppercase first letter, but you do not want all caps as the purchaser. All right. Now your vehicle is into private. What do you do now? Well, I carry that around with me, along with my notice of liability that I've already served on a sheriff and ordered him to tell all the bylaw police, your road pirate days are over, or you're going to be behind bars in my jail. 1-page document. Be proactive. Own your authority. You have national immunity. I do believe that there's a group that's going to take my notice of liability and create it for every state. And then once they got that, they can create for every state and every county. And then you just adjust it for your city or wherever it is, wherever that location is that you're with the notary jurat. All right. Have I finished explaining how I'm going to fix this for you? Let's get back to this. That all persons invested with the legislative or executive powers of government are the trustees of the public and, as such, accountable for their conduct. Well, if they're your trustees and your servants, then they're going to do what you tell them to do. All right? If not, you're going to hold them accountable. Wherefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted, the and public liberty manifestly endangered, and all other means of redress are ineffectual, the people may, and of right, ought to reform the old or establish a new government. The doctrine of non resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is what? Can you finish that for me? The next word. Absurd. It's absurd. The doctrine of non resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, comma. Uh-oh, something else going with that. What else? What else did our forefathers say? The doctrine of non resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish. See, now I keep telling you, you're a trained slave. It's not that you're a slave who has been trained. You're a free man who has been dumbed down through the education system right from birth. Your mother, your father have been dumbed down. So they teach you the dumb down. Your grandma, your grandpa, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, everything on TV, the radio, the movies, the attorneys, your servants. They got you brainwashed. I'm here to unwash your brain. God is angry. God's really angry. God is so angry. That's why I got to keep talking about this, because I got to get through to you so I can get a break. You got to know who you are. You have national immunity. Own it. Put your vehicle into private. Write your notice of liability and serve it on your sheriff. Read your state's constitutions. Collect them all. Collect all the state's constitutions, bills of rights, declarations of rights. Put it in a Word document. Now you can use your find feature and you can search out a word. You want to know about prosecution? You can write in prosecute, prosecutor, prosecution, and see how many words populate. Immunity, follow it, read it, learn it, own it, stand on it. How are you going to fix this, Ethan? What our forefathers tell me? What do they tell you? Or establish a new government. Reform the old, or establish a new. I don't need to do too much reforming. All right. We got counties around us. I can order them in. I can order those sheriffs in to stand with us as a constitutional accountability committee. And we're going to get some constitutional accountability. Well, Ethan, you can, yeah, I can. I absolutely can, and I am. Ain't nothing stopping it. I know how to create the paperwork. I know how to stand on it. I know how to get the organization together. And if the sheriffs in the other counties decide that they want to be treasonous rats, so be it. That's going to be their decision. Ain't nothing going to stop me. Nothing. Because I love you. And you're in chains. And I'm going to get it fixed. All right. Gretchen. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 4 pages of admits to finish up here. All right. So I might stop and do some commentary. I might hold it all off for the end, but let's get a ripping on this. All right. Admit that by the DEA stating cannabis is too dangerous to be made into a drug and then make cannabis into a drug, the position is untenable. Yeah, let's make Marinol Schedule 3 drug because cannabis is too dangerous to be made into a drug. It's not a drug. It is a God-given natural plant. You can't fix stupid. But we can take care of it. And we are. Admit that constitutional rights guaranteed to the people cannot be diminished by fake science, misguidance, and suppression or oppression of any nefarious acts by any public servant, and that government personnel are fully accountable to the people. Admit that constitutional rights guaranteed to the people cannot be diminished by legislative statutes, rules, and or regulations, nor do the rights of the people end at state lines. All right, so you're in commerce, you need that driver's license without prejudice pursuant to UCC 1-308. That means privileges without penalties. It takes care of that, doesn't it? All right. Admit that the people have the right and liberty to discern and decide for themselves how to be healthy. Oh, no, 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 no. We're going to administer that for you. We're the Department of Health Denial. Oh, I thought you were health providers. Oh, that's what the sign says. The sign says health providers. And that's, that's what we charge you for. But we're health deniers. They are. They're health deniers. I'm going to light up a cigarette. I do love to smoke. All right. Where did I leave off here? Admit that constitutional rights guaranteed to the people cannot be diminished by legislative statutes, rules, and or regulations, nor do the rights of the people end at state lines. Without prejudice pursuant to UCC 1-308. Research that. Don't trust me. It means privileges without penalties. UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. Uniform Commercial Code. They don't apply to the man. It applies to that fiction. And that fiction's got a man involved. Statutes, acts, rules, regulations, codes all have to be in line with article and section. If it is repugnant, it must be abrogated. Your rights cannot be abridged. They cannot be shortened. Own your authority. You have national immunity. I'm going to keep saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it until you understand it. You have all power. Constitution says you have all power. Back to reading. Admit that the people have a right and liberty to discern and decide for themselves how to be healthy. Admit that tooth decay is harmful to people. Admit that government has duty to protect and serve the best interest of the people. Admit that poor oral health leads to receding gum tissue. Admit that poor oral health leads to many poor health outcomes. Admit that advanced poor oral health leads to death. Death. It does. It killed my little brother in 2016. Well, they were messing with me when I could have helped him. I ain't very happy about that. But I know my brother's in a better place. And I know he's looking down on me, shining some light, giving some blessing. I miss you, Myron. I miss you, brother. All right. Admit that a tooth without a living, functioning nerve has no immunity. Admit that the National Institute of Health has no proof that a root canal tooth is safe and is not toxic. Admit that the American Dental Association has no proof that a root canal tooth is safe and is not toxic. Admit that reportedly 15 million root canal procedures are performed yearly in the USA, thus adding 15 million toxic teeth to the United States population annually. Admit that in the year 2016, National Institute of Health funding of $1.8 billion grant with taxpayer money for a study titled Revolutionizing the Root Canal failed to rejuvenate or regenerate gum tissue. Admit that the United States National Library of Medicine had a position prior to the National Institute of Health funding 1.8 billion taxpayer dollars in the year 2016 for the study titled Revolutionizing the Root Canal, a study that failed to rejuvenate or regenerate gum tissue, and that position of the United States National Library of Medicine was, if you had lost gum tissue, it's gone forever and not coming back. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean sent petition to remove from schedules and classify cannabis as essential and was received by the DEA May 6th, 2021. See Exhibit 9 on page 42 of this document. A little bit of righteous indignity. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we're going through this. That's what I'm sorry about. Admit the United States. Let's see. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean, a citizen of Michigan, and yeah, you can say you're a citizen. You just don't want to be saying it in the admiralty court where you say, yeah, assume and presume that I'm a slave and you can administer me. All right. You got these false teachers out there telling you can't say you're a person, you're a citizen. Well, you are. But the bar has bastardized language and they use it against you because they have their legalese that you can't understand. And then they take words that are common to you and they throw that in the mix. And then they use their assumptions and their presumptions and they get you to say you live in the United States. Now you're in their jurisdiction. You don't live in the United States. Where do you live? You live in the United States of America. The United States is 10 square miles, known as DC. All right. More of that trickery. Back to reading. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean, a citizen of Michigan, is the organizer of the Citizen Scientist Oral Health Project and owner of the website www.oralhealthwithcannabis.com, displaying documentation with pictures, declaration, and testimony, removes calcified oral plaques with cannabis, and is supported with a issued United States patent. A lot of good that's doing you. And so far, a lot of trouble for me. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean, a citizen of Michigan, is the organizer of Citizen Science Oral Health Project, an owner of website www.oralhealthwithcannabis.com, displaying documentation with pictures, declaration, and testimony, rejuvenates lost gum tissue and is supported with a United States patent pending status with formulations containing cannabis extract. You think I was going to issue? Science couldn't do it. Still can't do it. $1.8 billion. Still can't do it. And that was filed in early 2016. You think that's not going to issue? How come they keep suppressing it? They won't even look at it. They won't even look. It should be fast tracked. Oh, well, they want me to pay for that. Yeah, well, they steal everything from me, make it but near impossible for me, right? Admit that sun exposure can and does cause burns to human skin that leads to skin cancer in some cases. Admit that skin cancer kills humans. Admit that cannabis demonstrates medicinal efficacy as a sunscreen in human health outcomes, as evidenced by Mr. Ethan D. Dean. You take a look at those pictures. They're on the bottom page of my website, the bottom of the homepage. I went out and sacrificed myself. I burnt myself for you. Right next to an area that was covered with some cannabis solution. And it's as white as it was when I started. And where it wasn't is burnt. So I prove it. Visual, measurable, repeatable results. Something that for decades, people cured their cancer, people cure this, cure that. Doctor says, oh, that happens. It's anecdotal. You can't prove it. I prove it. Visual, measurable, gum tissue rejuvenation. Science can't do it. Calcified plaque removal. Science can't do it. Sunscreen, natural. No chemicals. Natural. Good for you. Healing for you. Rejuvenative for your skin. Protective for your skin. Should be growing wild everywhere and be free. No, they want you rubbing toxic chemicals on your body. They want you sick and miserable and broke. Fearful, hopeless, helpless, sorry, sad. Game's over. Game is over. All right. Admit that the accumulation of oral plaques on teeth and oral tissue are primary factors in the development of tooth decay and deterioration of oral health and a contributing cause of many diseases and chronic conditions in humans. Admit that a former United States Surgeon General stated that you cannot be healthy without good oral health. And he was spot on with that. Admit there is a large body of evidence that a root canal tooth has lost its immune function. Admit that chronic oral infections reduce overall immune function. Admit that infected teeth cause harm to people. Gretchen. Gretchen don't want to admit that, but she did by acquiescence. She admitted all of this. I'm not used to having this wire on. Got to use a computer for lives for now. Admit a form. Admit that there are bodies of evidence suggesting that every root canal tooth is a toxic tooth. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean owns a United States patent with method of manufacturing claims. Method claims. Those are strong, strong claims. This is mine. Ain't nobody taking it. Method of manufacturing claims for oral hygiene products supported with documented efficacy that can prevent tooth decay and related oral diseases through the prevention of and or removal of calcified oral plaques. Admit that the DEA Schedule 1 classification of cannabis is wrong based on the evidence presented by Mr. Ethan D. Dean, and that the conflicting position and listing Marinol as a Schedule III drug. Admit that cannabis has efficacy in oral health in humans as documented and evidenced and disclosed herein. Admit that the endocannabinoid system in humans was discovered in 1992. Admit that cannabis is a God-given natural plant and from lack of study and research has an unknown number of yet to be identified cannabinoids. Admit that United States government has not instituted serious, if any, study of the endocannabinoid system in humans. Admit that the United States federal government has prevented and criminalized the study of cannabis and cannabis efficacy in humans, human health for decades. Admit that the United States federal government has only in recent times allowed highly restricted study in cannabis human health efficacy. Admit that the majority of American citizens wish for cannabis suppression to end. Admit that the natural herb is a God-given natural plant. Admit that the Michigan grants no authority to public servants to dictate which God-given plants are restricted to the people. Admit that legalization of cannabis in medical marijuana and recreational marijuana classification creates many ways for a man or many ways a man or woman can be in violation of laws, rules, regulations, limitations, and restrictions of liberty and be oppressed by, for, and of. Admit that the Michigan State Police and the Kalkaska County Sheriff raided the residence and business of Mr. Ethan D. Dean December 15, 2015. Admit that the Kalkaska County prosecutor representing the people of Michigan filed multiple felony criminal charges against Mr. Ethan D. Dean in the month of May, year of our Lord, 2016. See Exhibit 11 on page 45 of this document. Oh, that was a bad day. That was a bad day for me. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean was not charged with harm to a man or woman or one of the people. Admit that public servants during the raid seized firearms owned by Mr. Ethan D. Dean and were confiscated and taken from him, leaving him without means of defending himself with a firearm. Oh, he's road pirates. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean showed pictures. Got pirates on my mind. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean showed pictures of calcified oral plaque removal to the public servants as they were raiding his business. Admit to this day, Mr. Ethan D. Dean, by Michigan statute law, cannot apply for expungement of his criminal record. Admit that confiscation of a man's cash, freezing his bank accounts, preventing him from working in his occupation, closing his business, suppressing his discoveries, and charging him with crimes against the state handicap him from pursuing property or having productive time, as well as his efforts at funding his freedom and ability to serve the oral health needs of the people that science and medicine are not capable of is wicked and evil. It is. Admit that Mr. Ethan D. Dean over the years has repeatedly declared with claims, documentation, and evidence of gum tissue rejuvenation in humans to Michigan legislators and governors. Governors. Admit that all Michigan servants that know of the evidence presented by Mr. Ethan D. Dean have done nothing to correct the unconstitutional incarceration of people for cannabis related charges and convictions. You got all these people rotting away in prison. They should be free with their loved ones, enjoying life, liberty, freedom, acquiring property, having security. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to fix it for you. I'm going to fix it. Admit that the oppression and direct interference from state and federal governments and agencies have severely limited Mr. Ethan D. Dean and his financial ability to pursue his rightful opportunity to own intellectual property, both foreign and domestic. Admit that with evidence presented of beneficial efficacy of cannabis with visual, measurable, repeatable results that are also patented and patent pending, it is a treasonous, tyrannical act to deny the people the oral health benefit, freedom, and liberty of and with cannabis. Admit that with the evidence presented of beneficial efficacy of cannabis with visual, measurable, repeatable results that are also patented and patent pending, it is a treasonous, tyrannical act to deny the people health freedom with cannabis. Admit that with evidence presented of beneficial efficacy of cannabis with visual, measurable, repeatable results that are also patented and patent pending, it is treasonous, tyrannical act to oppress the people for any cannabis use. Admit that the evidence presented herein that any continued government suppression of the beneficial oral health composites of cannabis for the people is not beneficial to the people, their good health, and the people's general welfare, and represents maladministration. Admit that Michigan joined Illinois, Washington, Massachusetts, Florida, and several other states in identifying cannabis as an essential service during COVID-19 stay-at-home orders, yet criminalizes cannabis. Do you understand the insanity of this? Admit that private member association is outside of government authority except for harm that results from instances of clear and present danger of substance evil stated and defined by the United States Supreme Court. I think I know some private associations that are going to get pierced. A bunch of them. Admit the criminal charges and prosecution of the people for use of a God-given plant that clearly provides optimal oral hygiene is wicked and evil. Admit that there is no constitutional authority to enforce state statutes that deny the people happiness and good health. And if there were, they would be repugnant and they'd need to be abrogated. Admit that there is no constitutional authority to enforce federal or state statutes that are oppressive and or criminalize and deny the people's happiness or freedom of health, or have authority granted to suppress my discoveries. Admit that being healthy is a reason for happiness. Admit that health freedom and health privacy are constitutionally protected rights of the people. Please take notice that the Bar Association is a private entity and is not contracted with, nor does it serve to enhance the will of the American people, but stands as outside of those granted with government authority. Please take further notice that a private association such as the Bar Association, private associations may be pierced for nefarious acts or inherent evil. Please see Dennis versus United States 341 U.S. 494, 1951. Also Brandenburg versus Ohio 395 U.S. 444, 1969. And I, as of the people, am under the belief that attacking those who serve the will of the people and making baseless claims of fake science for an excuse for tyrannical oppression is treasonous. And by and through this petition and protest, I demand a return to fundamental principles of governance and to constitutional protection and liberties of the people. And it is my wish, order, and demand that you acknowledge the facts presented and take action by executive order declaring cannabis essential in human health efficacies, and take other actions that correct the wrongs of the past with remedy. Please take notice that as one of the people, it is realized that the bar has been used to harass the people of America with administrative cases that are held outside of the rights and constitutions guaranteed in the states by public officers by oath, running adversarial trial-like procedures against the people who are to be protected by constitutions, trust indenture of the United States, is causing the government trustees to directly war with the Constitution and the people, which give them the power to sit in the seats they sit in. Please take further notice that the Bar Association is a private association. The people have not authorized private foreign entities to use our governing agencies or their representative policymakers police, employees, or courts to attack those who stand in their position for the people's protections and civil rights. If you legislative statutes, rules, and regulations to control, deny, incarcerate, or ignore health, freedom, liberty, and visual, measurable, patented evidence of efficacy with cannabis in humans, and oppress the people's health, freedom, and God-given plants and herbs and private business of the people, please show the authority in the state constitution and where we, the people, gave any public servant the power to interfere with the will of we, the people, within 10 days receipt of this notice. No public servant has the will, and no public servant has the authority to go against our will. I got the PCAPs on the governor. I'm reading it to you. We held court. I got the PCAPs on the sheriff. We held court. I went to 3 garrison commanders and in a court as the emergency executive manager for the state of Michigan, ordered those garrison commanders to do their duty and report for instructions. They failed. When all, where is it? Let's read that correctly. And all other means of redress are ineffectual, the people may and of right ought to reform the old. And we're going to reform the old. And we have all power. The governor is a treasonous rat. She has no authority. The Kalkaska County Sheriff is a treasonous rat. He has no authority. See how I'm going to fix this? Just a couple pieces of paper, a few orders, a couple men standing by my shoulders, a couple of meetings, a plan of action, and execute. Godspeed. All right, there's not too much left here to read, so let's just skip. Well, no, maybe there is something I want to read here. No, I think we go right to the remedy. Remedy shall be had, in part, with redress to the citizenry of the great state of Michigan by classifying cannabis as essential in beneficial human health outcomes, immediately releasing all people of nonviolent related cannabis convictions from incarceration, court proceedings, probation, and to give strong consideration to all people for violent related cannabis conviction, incarceration, court proceedings, and probation for redress, and immediately institute expungement for any and all nonviolent cannabis convictions, and fund research with grants to the efficacy of cannabis in humans. Redress the people and their posterity with the most beneficial oral health treatments and procedures at no cost to the people, and open research to all God-given natural plants and fungi for human health benefits. Please take further notice that remedy and redress of and for me, Mr. Ethan D. Dean of the Michigan State Government and the United States Federal Government and agencies of the personnel and professional attacks, the suppression and oppression that has prevented me from operating a business with cannabis for over 5 consecutive years is a separate matter. Equally as well, the matter of interference with my intellectual property pursuits is a separate matter of and for remedy. I affirm and assert that I in no way waive, surrender, or forfeit any rights or remedies I may have in my personal or professional capacity, with regards to remedy as pertaining to any and all matters stated, recorded within this document and or this court record, and all remain separate set of matters of this document and its demand to liberate the health freedoms for the people of Michigan. Please take further notice and consider that water injures and kills people in many different ways, and yet it is essential for life. Cannabis is responsible for 0 death to date. Science to date cannot rejuvenate gum tissue, yet cannabis does. Well, like I said, you can't fix stupid, but we can take care of it. I'm going to take care of it. And it's going to happen real soon. I know exactly what to do. I know exactly how to do it. And all I got to do is get to work and get it done. All right. And it's domino time, baby. Boom, 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 boom. All right. Are you free up here? You got to get over that mental block. It's a tough one. You have all power. You have national immunity, Americans. Own it. Put your vehicle into private. Write a notice of liability. Serve it on your sheriff. You won't spend a day in an administrative court. No more assumptions and presumptions and tricks. All right. I'm going to end it here. I love you all. Blessings. On our way to victory. Peace out. Yep. And